fun parts. So we're gonna start with the frontal lobe. This is the giant kind of pink and orange cortex that you see on the front of the brain here. It's conveniently named frontal lobe, so that's nice. So there's a lot that goes on here. It's kind of, as an umbrella term, involved in most of the complex cognitive processes. So what that means are things like decision-making, planning, judgment, those kind of higher level things. I've highlighted a particular area here in light pink. This is kind of more known as the prefrontal cortex. So it's a part of the frontal lobe that has some more particular actions, more particular functions. It's called pre because it's in front, before the frontal lobe. So this is the very, very front tip of your brain. So the key things that this kind of does are things like planning. So when you're making schedules, when you're thinking out your movements, making intentional motions, those kind of things, any sort of planning is done in the prefrontal cortex. It's also involved in attention and cognitive control, which means things like filtering out distracting, irrelevant information and focusing your attention on what's important. So being able to make that distinction is in the frontal lobe. And then lastly, things like judgment and decision-making. So if you've got two options, being able to weigh the two pros and cons, judging which one is better for you, being able to judge the consequences of your actions, things like that. So any of those kind of difficult thought questions typically involves the frontal lobe. Now, one other region here, which I have highlighted kind of at the bottom in this striped pattern, is called the orbitofrontal cortex. Now you'll notice here, it's right above that little gap where our eyes are. Orbito means towards the eyes. So this is towards the eyes in the frontal cortex, orbitofrontal cortex. It's a specific region that is part of this pink prefrontal. So it's included in that term as well. But this particular region does some special things. So it hones in on things like impulse control and anticipating the outcomes of your decisions. People who have damage to this area also exhibit some pretty inappropriate social behaviors because they lack these abilities to control their impulses or realize how their decisions affect others. So kind of know this area as something that's involved in a lot of like social interaction, social behavior, being able to, if you're hanging out with a friend, not just go up and, I don't know, say rude things or touch them weird, or just, you know, hold a normal conversation with someone. So if this area is damaged, you have some social difficulties. Fun fact, so this prefrontal cortex, so again, this entire kind of light pink area, is one of the last brain regions to develop. It often, you might have heard this before, it's not fully mature until about age 25 or so. So I want you to pause here and think about it. Can you think of some ways the fact that this region of the frontal lobe that's involved in a lot of these complex cognitive processes, the fact that this doesn't mature until way later, can you think of some ways that this has affected some of the policies that you see in our society? Think of things like what our drinking age is, voting age, etc. So take a pause here and let's think about how social policy is taking advantage of what we know about the brain.